AITA for letting my parents lose everything when they chose a wedding over saving me? I am 33 years old, and I have spent the last 17 years of my life working in construction. I started at the very bottom. We are talking pushing wheelbarrows full of concrete in 95-degree heat, hauling lumber up 3 flights of stairs. The absolute bottom. Today, I run my own crews as a site supervisor, but we will get to that later. First, you need to understand where I come from, because that is what makes this whole story so twisted. Growing up in our house in the suburbs was like living in a parallel universe where I was invisible while my younger sister, Megan, was treated like a star every time she learned a new dance step. I am not exaggerating. Our house was a shrine to Megan. Every wall, every shelf, every flat surface was covered with trophies, certificates, or photos of her achievements. Dance recitals, piano competitions, participation awards from spelling bees. You name it, it was there, all displayed like precious artifacts. As for me, I had exactly one photo in the entire house. A single one, from my high school graduation, tucked away in an old, dusty album that probably had not seen the light of day in years. And yet, I was not a problem kid. I was a starter in football and wrestling at our local public high school. I had a solid B+ average. I worked a part-time job. I never got into trouble with the law. But in my parents' eyes, all of that was just normal. No praise, no celebrations, just a nod, and, if they were feeling generous, a good job. I started lifting weights seriously in my sophomore year, partly for football, but mostly to channel all that frustration. The gym became my sanctuary. While Megan got private piano and dance lessons, I was in the garage with a basic bench and some used dumbbells I bought with money from mowing lawns. My dad never once spotted me or showed any interest. He was too busy filming Megan's dance recitals. You know what still stings today? I can count on one hand the number of times my parents came to see me compete in wrestling. 3 times in 4 years of competing at the regional level. They always had an excuse. Megan had a recital. Megan had a competition. Megan needed help with her homework. I won the state championship in my weight class my senior year. Neither of them was there. Why? Megan had an audition for a summer dance program that she quit after 2 weeks. By the time I was 16, I was already working on construction sites during summer breaks. Not because we were poor. My dad had a comfortable office job in management at a local manufacturing company, and my mom worked part-time as a real estate agent. No, I worked because I wanted to be anywhere but home. The guys on the job site became more of a family to me than my own. They taught me everything. How to read blueprints. How to operate machinery. How to spot when someone was trying to cut corners in a way that could cause serious accidents. But most importantly, they taught me what it means to have each other's backs. I moved out the day after my high school graduation. I was hired full-time by the construction company I had been working for during the summers. I rented a small studio apartment that barely fit a bed and a mini fridge. My parents hardly noticed. They were too busy planning Megan's Sweet 16, which cost more than my first year's rent. The following years, I worked incredibly hard to learn everything about the trade. I went from laborer to carpenter to crew leader. By 25, I was running my own crew. The guys respected me because they knew I had done every single job I was asking them to do. I was not some college kid with a clipboard telling them how to work. I was in the trenches with them, getting just as dirty, lifting just as heavy. Meanwhile, Megan went off to an overpriced private university. Guess who paid? She changed her major 3 times before settling on communications or marketing. Every time she came home, it was like a big celebration. Mom would cook these elaborate meals. Dad would clear his schedule to spend quality time with her. I would get a text on my birthday, if they remembered. But all that favoritism made me stronger. Every ignored achievement, every missed game, every time they chose her over me, it all just fueled my determination to succeed despite them, not because of them. When my health took a turn, I was bench pressing 315 pounds for reps, deadlifting 500, and leading crews that finished projects ahead of schedule and under budget. At 28, I was doing well at work. I had become a site supervisor for one of the largest construction firms in the region. I had my own apartment, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I was even starting to think about starting my own company one day. And then life threw me a tough curveball. It started with a strange pain in my chest. It was different from the usual aches. At first, I ignored it. When you work construction long enough, random pains become background noise. Plus, I was the type who thought being tough meant pushing through. Looking back, that was a big mistake. The wake-up call came during a deadlift session. I was going for a new personal record, 530 pounds. The warm-up felt fine, but when I pulled the bar, it felt like a tight band around my chest with every breath. I had to drop it. Suddenly, I was on the floor, struggling to breathe. My buddy Jason from the job site, the same guy who taught me everything I know about concrete, practically took me straight to the emergency room. I figured it was just a pulled muscle or a pinched nerve. Wrong. After what felt like a million tests and scans, the doctor came in with that serious look. You know the one. The one where he is trying to stay professional, but you can tell he is about to deliver difficult news. I had a serious condition involving a growth that was affecting my lung, and not the kind you just quickly remove and move on. We were talking major surgery, followed by treatments that were intense. The kind of situation that makes you realize all those hours in the gym, all that protein and creatine, mean nothing when your body faces such a challenge. But the real shock was the cost. Remember how I said I was doing well at work? Yeah, construction companies are not exactly known for their amazing benefits. I had no health insurance. And like the invincible young person I was, I had never bothered to get a private plan. Why spend money on that when I could spend it on supplements and new gym equipment, right? I was so short-sighted. The numbers the hospital shared might, as well, have been overwhelming. The surgery alone was going to cost more than I made in 2 years. And then you had to add all the treatments, medications with names I could not even pronounce, and the follow-up care. We were talking enough to buy a house in some states, and they wanted the money up front, or at least proof I could pay. Welcome to the American healthcare system. I tried everything before I got to that point. I called every insurance company I could find, but back then, pre-existing conditions were still a major issue. I looked into clinical trials, but none were accepting new patients. I even looked at medical tourism options that offer treatments in other countries, but my doctors advised against it. They told me I needed to start treatment right away. My crew, those guys were incredible. Jason started a GoFundMe the very first day. The others offered to donate their vacation days, their sick leave, anything they could. Even the old hard worker who had given me a hard time since day one, teasing me about wearing sunscreen to avoid skin issues, came up to me with an envelope full of cash he had been saving. But it was not enough. Not even close. The numbers were just too big. We were talking 6 figures, and the clock was ticking. Every day I waited, the situation got worse, making it harder to breathe, harder to work, making a normal day feel like a struggle. I lost 15 pounds that first month, just from the stress and being unable to eat properly. I had to switch to light-duty tasks at work because I could not handle heavy loads anymore. The nights were the worst. Lying there, wondering if every breath was going to be the one that changed everything. That is when I made the hardest decision of my life. After years of being the guy who handled his own challenges, who never needed help, who built everything from nothing, I had to swallow my pride and go ask my parents for help. They were not super rich, but they had savings, good credit, a fully paid-off house. And they were my parents. The people who are supposed to be there when everything falls apart. It was a Tuesday night when I went to their house. I remember it perfectly because I had gotten my latest test results that morning, and the doctor was strongly urging me to schedule the surgery as soon as possible. I had lost another 10 pounds that month. My work jeans were hanging off me. The chest pain was getting so bad I had to take breaks just to walk up a single flight of stairs. Their house had not changed. The property values in their neighborhood had doubled since they bought it. They were sitting on at least $500,000 in equity in the house alone. I sat across from them, trying to ignore the discomfort in my chest, and I laid it all out. The diagnosis, the timeline, the costs. I showed them all the paperwork from the hospital, the treatment plans, everything. I even had a letter from my doctor explaining the urgency of the situation. My hands were shaking the whole time, but not from the illness. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, asking them for help. And you know what they were doing while I was pouring my heart out? My mom kept glancing at her phone, like she was waiting for a more important call. My dad sat there, arms crossed, with that same look he used to have when I would tell him about my wrestling matches, like he was enduring an annoying distraction. When I finally finished, there was a long, uncomfortable silence. Then my mom and dad did that thing they always did, that little exchange of looks, like they were having a whole conversation without saying a word. Finally, my dad cleared his throat and delivered the news. "We cannot help you with this, Tyler. We have already committed our savings to Megan's wedding." At first, I thought I had misheard him. But no, he just sat there looking at me as if he had just explained he could not lend me $20 for gas. The wedding? I remember my voice cracking, not with emotion, but with pure disbelief. "You are choosing a celebration over my health situation?" My mom chimed in, all soft and calm, as if she were explaining something to a child. "It is not just a celebration, Tyler. It is Megan's special day. We have already put down non-refundable deposits." The venue alone was $30,000. $30,000 for a venue. Meanwhile, I was sitting there, facing a serious medical issue that required urgent intervention, and they were worried about their precious Megan's picture-perfect wedding. "I could face very serious consequences without this surgery," I said slowly, making sure they understood exactly what they were doing. "It is not like I am asking for help buying a car or starting a business. This is life or death." My dad had the nerve to shrug, like he was sending back an entree the waiter got wrong. "You have always been resourceful, Tyler. You will figure something out. This is Megan's moment. We cannot let her down." That is when it hit me. All those years of being the forgotten son, all the missed events, all the times they chose her over me. It was not just them being busy or distracted. They genuinely valued her happiness more than my well-being. Their son could literally be in real danger, and they were more concerned about their daughter's perfect wedding photos. I stood up to leave, my legs barely holding me. My mom even had the audacity to say, "Do not be so dramatic, Tyler. There must be a payment plan you can work out with the hospital." A payment plan, like I was buying a set of dishes. The last thing I remember before I walked out was that wall covered in photos of Megan. All those smiles, all that money spent to make sure their precious daughter had a perfect everything. And me, their son, leaving that house knowing I meant less to them than a celebration. That was the last time I spoke to them for almost 5 years. The months after my parents chose the wedding over helping me with my medical needs were extremely difficult. But here is the thing about hitting that low point. Once you are there, you have nothing left to lose. And sometimes, that is exactly what you need to find out who you really are. The first thing I did after leaving their house was drive straight to the job site. It was late, but I knew Jason would still be there finishing up paperwork. He has been running the night shift for 15 years. I found him in the site office, doing what he always does. I told him everything. I will not lie, I broke down halfway through. There I was, 6'3" and 220 pounds. Well, more like 190 at that point, overcome with emotion in a construction trailer. You know what Jason did? He did not say a word. He just got up and locked the office door. Then he picked up his phone and started making calls. By midnight, we had a plan. It was not a perfect plan, but when you are struggling, you do not complain about the details. The next few weeks were a blur of negotiating payment plans with the hospital, applying for loans, and working every overtime hour I could physically handle. The crew, my real family, stepped up in a way I still cannot talk about without getting emotional. These guys, most of whom were living paycheck to paycheck themselves, managed to pull together nearly $15,000 for my treatment fund. Carlos, our master carpenter who sends half his check home to his family, handed me an envelope with $2,000 in cash, saying his kids could wait another year for their gifts. Big Mike, who everyone thought was just a concrete pouring strongman, turned out to be a fundraising genius. He got the local gym to host a charity bench press competition, convinced local businesses to donate prizes, and raised another $8,000 in a single weekend. But it still was not enough. Not even close. The surgery alone was projected to be over $80,000, and that was before adding in all the other treatments. So, I did what I had to do. I sold my pickup truck, the one I had spent 2 years restoring on weekends. I sold my custom-built gaming setup. I sold every piece of weightlifting equipment I owned. I even sold my grandfather's watch, the only thing he ever left me. That one hurt the most. All the while, I was still trying to work as much as possible, even though by that point I could barely get through a 4-hour shift without struggling. The situation was getting worse, pressing harder. Every breath felt difficult. I lost another 15 pounds. My work boots did not fit anymore because my feet were swelling. The worst part was seeing Megan's wedding preparations all over social media. My parents were constantly posting updates about cake tastings, venue walkthroughs, floral arrangements, and dress fittings. Every post felt like a reminder of the contrast. Their flower budget alone could have covered one of my treatment sessions. The designer dress they bought her probably cost enough to pay for my first round of care. Then came the wedding invitations. Not for me, obviously. I found out from a cousin who still talked to me. Apparently, they were these elaborate things with gold foil and custom calligraphy, costing $15 each. They ordered 200 of them. You do the math. $3,000 for pieces of paper most people throw away, while their son was working extra security shifts at a warehouse on top of his day job, barely able to manage. But this is where the story takes a turn you might not expect. Remember that GoFundMe Jason started? It caught the eye of one of our suppliers, a big commercial building materials company. Their CEO had lost his brother to a similar condition. The guy calls me personally one morning and says he wants to help. Just like that, he tells me they are going to cover 40% of my medical bills through their corporate charity foundation. It was the lifeline I needed. Between that, the loans I took out, everything I sold, and what the crew raised, I could finally schedule the surgery. I had to use my retirement savings, max out 3 credit cards, and sign up for a repayment plan that would take me years to pay off, but I was going to get through it. The surgery was scheduled for 3 days before Megan's wedding. Not that they knew or cared. They were too busy with final fittings and rehearsal dinners. I went into the operating room with support from my real family. Jason took the day off to drive me. Carlos's wife made me a batch of homemade food for after the surgery. Big Mike organized the crew to cover all my shifts for the next month. You want to know what real family is? It is not the people who share your DNA. It is the guys who work extra shifts so you can make rent while you are recovering. It is the calloused-handed carpenter who sits in a hospital waiting room for 12 straight hours so you do not wake up by yourself. It is the crew that passes around a hard hat to collect dollars and loose change because every single cent helps. I got through the surgery. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital and another month recovering at home. The crew took turns checking on me, bringing food, helping with basic things I could not do while I was healing. Not once did my phone ring with a call from my parents or Megan. They were probably too busy posting wedding photos on social media. The recovery was challenging. Anyone who has been through major surgery knows what I am talking about. That feeling where even basic activities require relearning. But here is the thing about hitting that low point. Once you start climbing back up, you realize just how strong you really are. And climb I did. The first few months were tough. I had lost nearly all my muscle mass. I could not lift more than a gallon of milk without discomfort. But you know what? Every morning I woke up able to breathe better was motivation to keep going despite the people who had left me to face it alone. I started small, walking to the mailbox, then around the block, then actual cardio. I rebuilt myself, one step at a time. Jason and the crew kept me on light duty, mostly supervision and paperwork. It was not much, but it kept me in the game. I started learning the business side of construction, contracts, bidding, project management. Turns out, when you cannot do the heavy lifting anymore, your brain starts to work overtime. About a year after the surgery, I got an unexpected call from the CEO who helped pay my medical bills. He wanted to meet for coffee. I figured he just wanted to check on things. Not at all. He had been watching how I handled everything. The recovery, the work, managing the crews. He offered me a job as a project manager for their commercial division. Better pay, full benefits, and most importantly, a chance to learn how the big leagues really play. I took that chance and ran with it. I spent the next few years absorbing everything I could about commercial construction. Nights, weekends, it did not matter. While Megan was posting about her perfect suburban life and my parents were bragging about their golf club, I was building something real. I started small, taking the projects nobody else wanted, the ones with tight margins where you had to get creative. I learned every trick to maximize efficiency without ever compromising on safety or quality. My crews loved me because I had actually been in their boots, because I knew what it was like to work hard in 100-degree heat for a paycheck. Within 3 years, I was managing multi-million-dollar projects. Remember that serious condition that almost changed everything? I used that experience to specialize in building medical facilities. Turns out, hospitals love working with someone who understands their world from both sides. I started making connections, building relationships, the kind of network you cannot fake because it is built on shared experience. Then came the project that changed everything. A $50 million renovation of a medical center, the biggest job I had ever run. I spent 6 months planning it down to the last detail. The project was a massive success, delivered ahead of schedule and under budget. I got mentioned in a few trade magazines, won a couple of awards. Suddenly, I was not just a construction guy anymore. I was known for innovative work in medical facility design, and the calls started pouring in from other health systems that wanted to work with us. Meanwhile, my personal life got better, too. I met Jessica at a supplier conference. She runs a commercial electrical company. She was the first woman I had ever met who could talk about load-bearing calculations and make me laugh so hard my chest hurt, but for good reasons this time. We got married last year. Small ceremony, just close friends and my real family, the crew. Life was good. Then, about 6 months ago, I started hearing whispers in the industry. Remember that upscale golf club my parents were so proud of? Turns out my dad got involved in a real estate investment scheme with some of the other members. You know the type. Promises of huge returns, minimal risk. Except this time, it was not just their membership dues they invested. They mortgaged their house, cashed out their retirement accounts, the whole thing. The first sign something was wrong was when they suddenly started selling their assets. My dad's golf club membership was gone. My mom's brand new luxury vehicle was traded in for a used one. Their usual table at social events was empty. But the real chaos hit last month. I got a call from a number I did not recognize. I almost did not answer. I was in the middle of reviewing bids for a new project. It was my mother's voice, small and desperate in a way I had never heard before. "Tyler, we need to talk. It is important." That call from my mother. It turned out their financial situation was more serious than a simple setback. The investment scheme my dad had gotten into was catastrophic. They had sunk everything they owned into it. Their retirement savings, the equity in their house, and they had even taken out additional loans against the house as collateral. It was all gone. But here is the interesting part. Their first instinct was not to call their precious Megan, their golden child, the one they chose over helping me. No, they called me, the one they had left to face my medical needs alone. Because Megan had already told them to get lost. About a week before they called me, they had shown up at Megan's house in her nice neighborhood, the same house they had helped her and her lawyer husband buy with a massive down payment while I was still paying off my medical bills. They showed up with suitcases, thinking they could just move in with their daughter while they sorted things out. You want to know what their perfect daughter did? She had her husband answer the door. This corporate lawyer, who had been friendly with them at family dinners for 5 years, looked them in the eye and said, "We cannot risk having your financial problems affect our children's future." Then he handed them the business card of a bankruptcy attorney and closed the door, all while Megan watched from the window. The same daughter they had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on, private school, dance lessons, college, that expensive wedding, would not even let them stay for a night. The same parents who chose her wedding over helping their son were now standing on her doorstep with nowhere to go, and she treated them like unwanted visitors. My mother told me all of this through tears when she finally broke down and called me. Not because she was sorry for what they did to me. No, she was just desperate. They were 3 months behind on their mortgage. The bank was starting foreclosure proceedings. My dad's luxury sedan had already been repossessed. All their friends from the golf club had suddenly stopped answering their calls. "We do not know what to do, Tyler," she said through tears. "We have tried everything. We need help." I sat there in my office, my big corner office with a view of the city, listening to her. The same woman who had been distant when I told her about my serious medical needs was now falling apart because they might lose their house. "How much do you need?" I asked, my voice neutral, professional, like I was talking to a subcontractor who had messed up a bid. $50,000, she whispered, "just to catch up on the payments and stop the foreclosure. We will figure out the rest later." $50,000. The exact amount they had spent on Megan's wedding photographer and videographer. They had hired a high-end professional known for luxury events. The works. And Megan? What does she say about all this? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. There was a long silence. She says she is investing in her own family's future, that they cannot risk their financial stability. "But Tyler, we are your parents. We raised you." I cut her off. "The way you raised me when I needed surgery, when I was facing that serious situation. That was different," she snapped, anger suddenly replacing the tears. "That was an emergency. We had commitments." "An emergency?" My voice was rising now. I could have faced life-changing consequences, Mom. Actually serious ones. But you had commitments for Megan's wedding. And now you are calling me because she will not help you. That is when my dad got on the phone, still trying to sound authoritative, as if he had any power left in this situation. Listen to me, son. The past is the past. We need to think about the future, about family. Family. There was that word again. The one they always brought up when they needed something, but conveniently forgot when I was the one in need. Tell me something, Dad, I said, leaning back in my chair. When Megan shut you out, when her husband handed you that bankruptcy lawyer's card, did it hurt? Did it feel like your heart was being torn apart? Like the person you had given everything to did not care what happened to you? The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. The morning after that call, my head was a mess. I spent a couple of hours in my home gym, the one Jessica and I built in the basement, not really working out, just sitting on my bench press, staring at myself in the mirror, at the scar on my chest from the surgery I had to fight for alone. The next day, I got a call from the bank that held my parents' mortgage. Apparently, I was still listed as an emergency contact. Megan had demanded to be removed from all their financial documents months ago. The bank representative was very professional, explaining that they were preparing to initiate foreclosure proceedings and asking if I was in a position to help resolve the situation. I told them I would call them back. I still needed to think. That Saturday, I drove back to my old job site, the one where I started as a laborer, the one where Jason and the crew supported me through my difficult time. The place had changed. We were just finishing up that $50 million medical center. My project. Standing there in the morning sun, looking at that massive building that existed because I had gotten through it, I made my decision. I called my parents. I told them to meet me at the site, to be there at 7 in the morning sharp, when the day crew was arriving. They showed up looking distressed. "Why are we here, Tyler?" my mother asked, trying to sound commanding, but her voice trembled. They stuck out like sore thumbs in their country club casual clothes, surrounded by men and women in work gear who were actually producing something real. I turned to them. "You see this building? This entire medical center? It exists because I got through that difficult time. Not because of you, but despite you. Every person who gets treated here, every life that gets helped in this building, is because I made it without you." Dad started to say something, but I cut him off. "I brought you here so you would understand one thing. 5 years ago, I sat in your living room and asked you for help. I needed $80,000 for that life-saving surgery. You chose Megan's wedding instead. A celebration that cost more than what I needed to get through it. We have apologized for that," Mom interrupted, her voice weak. "We were wrong. We know that now." "No," I said, my voice firm. "You are not sorry you did it. You are sorry because now you need me. There is a difference." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. "You need $50,000 to save your house. That is less than you spent on the flowers for Megan's wedding. The daughter who will not even let you stay at her house today. So, are you going to help us or not?" My father demanded, a flash of his old attitude in his eyes. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I turned to the crew. My real family. "Jason, you remember when I needed that surgery? When everyone here pitched in to help me get through it?" Jason walked over, wiping his hands on his vest. "Sure do. Still got the hard hat we used for donations." I turned back to my parents. These men, who make a fraction of what you used to, who have their own families to feed, they gave everything they could so that I would get through it. They showed me what family really means. Then I did something that felt like a weight lifting off my chest. I smiled. "The answer is no. I am not giving you a single cent. Not for the house, not for anything. Ever." Mom burst into tears. My dad's face turned red. "We are your parents. You cannot just." "I can't," I cut him off. "And I am. You know what the difference is between you and Megan? Nothing. You are exactly the same. You only care about people as long as they are useful to you. The second they need something, you turn away." I gestured to the medical center rising behind me. "I built something real here. Something that helps people. While you were focusing on celebrations and golf, I was creating something that matters. And I did it without you. Where are we supposed to go?" Mom asked through tears. "We will be without a home." I shrugged. "You will figure something out. You are resourceful. Is that not what you told me when I was facing that serious situation?" I started to walk away, then I turned back one last time. "Oh, and Dad, remember what you said about family being family? You were right. Family is family. You are just not my family anymore." I left them there, standing in the dust of the construction site, surrounded by the men and women who had shown me what a real family was. I went up to my office and watched them from the window as they got into their older vehicle and drove away. That was 2 months ago. They lost the house last week. Megan is still not taking their calls. The last I heard, they were living in an extended stay motel, trying to figure out what to do next. Their country club friends have all vanished. Their golden child wants nothing to do with them. And me? I just signed the contract for a new medical center project, even bigger than the last one. The crew is still with me, every single one of them. Jessica is expecting our first child. Life is good. Sometimes consequences take their time, but when they finally arrive, they make sure to finish the job. And wow, this story has resonated with so many of you. Thanks for all the support. And for those asking, no, I do not regret my decision. Some bridges are meant to stay crossed. Comment: I have been thinking about this story a lot since I read it. What really stood out to me is how the main character chose to honor his own worth, even when it hurt. Sometimes we have to set clear boundaries to protect our peace, and that is okay. True kindness comes from the people who show up for you when things get tough, not just when it is easy. Healing often means learning to choose calm over chaos in our relationships. Taking responsibility for your own life can feel scary at first, but it is freeing. I wonder if you have ever felt the need to step back from certain family ties that drain you. You deserve connections that lift you up instead of weighing you down. Choosing peace does not make you cold, it just makes you wiser. Thank you for watching, and I would love to hear what this story made you reflect on. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.